We are back with our Simplicity mower deck, refurbishing the paint and coatings on the business end of the mower deck underneath. So far I have used a abrasive cup wheel on a drill to clean up the underside of this deck, remove any loose paint, get down to bare metal where corrosion had begun, and I've applied 3 coats of a Rust-Oleum protective primer. So that primer is for bare metal or on paint. They've got 2 versions, one for heavily rusted metal, one for lightly rusted metal. I've used the lightly rusted metal. And I used an 8-ounce can of that primer. That was perfect for doing 3 coats on this 38-inch deck. You don't need to get a big can of it. And when you're done, you can just throw it away. So I'm gonna follow up the primer with a Rust-Oleum protective enamel in gloss black. This should provide a wear-resistant layer. And then over the top of that, we're gonna put our non-stick graphite coating. So I'm planning, hopefully I can get another 3 coats of this protective enamel out of the 8-ounce can here. When I'm done, we can throw it away. I'll probably then sand the top coat slightly as we put our next layer of coatings on. But hopefully, if we wear through our graphite coating, our non-stick coating, this will be a bit of a tougher enamel coat to prevent wear into our primer. But we'll have to stay up on it, and we'll check that over time. But let's get this black enamel on. So spray painting would be a much faster process, and you get a little bit better top coat as far as paint thickness, and you don't get the brush strokes in it. But what you do get with spray paint is a lot of overspray and a lot more mess, smell in your garage. This is something you can do in your garage with vehicles in it. You're not worried about them getting a Rust-Oleum overcoat. So anyway, I prefer using a brush. Takes a bit longer, but you can put it on a little bit thicker. I'm not worried about how the underside of this deck looks, if there's brush strokes in it or not. So I think this is a good application to use the old can and a brush method. This is an oil-based paint, which is absolutely what you want for durability. Any water-based paint is not going to be as durable. That makes cleaning up our brushes a bit harder, again, because I'm not worried about necessarily the quality of the way the top coat looks. I'm just using this disposable 2-inch brush here that I can throw away after this coat, just to use a new one for each layer. They cost $1. So easier than, and probably cheaper than the cost of mineral spirits to clean up a brush. You know, if you look at $8 for a can of mineral spirits, probably use $1 worth just to clean up a brush. So I choose to just use a disposable brush and throw it away. I haven't used this Rust-Oleum enamel in quite some time, especially with a brush, but it actually goes on quite well. It's a little bit higher viscosity, and paints on pretty darn good with the brush here, especially with that primer layer intact. The first coat of the Rust-Oleum enamel is done and on. One of the reasons I chose black is to have a good contrast between the white primer, so I could easily judge coverage. And I would say coverage is excellent after this first coat. We can see barely any primer. There's just a few little spots where maybe in a brush stroke you can see it. But that's not going to stop me from doing additional coats. I've got about 5 months until I cut grass again, so I am not going to shortchange this process. So now we've kind of restored the paint on the underside of our deck. We've got the Rust-Oleum primer and then enamel top coat, 2 coats of that. Now we're going to transition to our non-stick coating. The non-stick coating, we're going to use this slide graphite paint. I used this last year. I did like 2 coats of it, and it worked really well for the non-stick properties, but it wore away really quickly. So that's part of the reason I built back up the enamel, the paint there before we're putting on this as a protective barrier, so we're not don't go back to bare metal again, hopefully. But I do have some of this Rust-Oleum enamel left, so for the transition layer, we're going to mix some of this enamel with the graphite coating and kind of create a transition area. This enamel sticks really well to itself, but we'll put some graphite in it to give us kind of a transition. Then we'll go to full graphite and build that up. We'll see how many layers I have patience to do, but the more, the better. It's meant to wear away, and that'll give us the best non-stick properties, I think. I do have to say, I kind of like these little cans. They're not the best value, what you pay per ounce. But for projects like this, where you don't use a lot, we're done with it now. We can just throw the can away. We don't have to store it for years and years, wondering if we're going to use it ever again. All right, this graphite paint is very watery. The graphite, as you can imagine, is very heavy, and it settles to the bottom. And so we have to stir this up really good before using it. It's been probably about a year since I moved it last, so we got to work that graphite back up into suspension. And then we'll combine it with our enamel and we'll put a light coat of that on. Graphite coating does use a lot of solvents to basically suspend the graphite in it as you put it on. Then solvents work well for this because they evaporate very quickly and then just leave the graphite behind. So it does a pretty good job of thinning out the enamel, just like using mineral spirits or something to thin the enamel. This graphite paint has the same effect on it, so it goes on quite well here. I'm really happy with that last coat of enamel graphite mixture. You can tell it's reduced the friction on here quite a bit. There's a slick feel to it, that graphite. And mixing with the enamel allowed me to get a lot higher build on here. So now I'm going to switch to 100% graphite paint and do some more coats on that to give it to reduce the friction even further. But I think this is going to be a very good barrier layer between the graphite and that enamel to hopefully wear longer, but yet still provide some of that friction reduction to prevent the grass from sticking. Hopefully the wear stops at this point and I can just service, recoat the graphite over time. But we'll see how that works in practice. So far it seems like it's doing a good job. Or so far I'm happy with how the paint went on. Let's get another coat on here. This is the mower deck with the first coat of graphite only. Looking really good. This stuff dries down nice. Also, just feeling it, you can feel the friction reduction due to that graphite. I think this will work well. We just have to build it up enough to where it wears slowly over a season and we don't wear down to that bare metal. Let's go ahead and get a second coat on this thing. All right, we just finished up our second coat of the graphite paint. That is our number 7th coat overall. We had 2 primer, 2 enamel, 1 enamel graphite mix, and then 2 solid graphite. I'm gonna keep going on this. It's kind of time consuming. The good thing is each coat of paint goes by pretty quick. Maybe a little too quick. Are you almost done? What are you doing out here? Huh? Oh yeah, just finishing up my YouTube videos. 5th coat of that graphite paint is now drying. I am calling that done. After this dries, I'm gonna get this off the sawhorses and wait until spring to reinstall it on the mower deck. Stop back at my channel in spring for test evaluation of this coating, and we'll see how this holds up through next cutting season. If you found any value in this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. Hit the thumbs up button, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching. Adios.